Is your home Wi-Fi network secure? Would you know if your network is open to hackers? The truth is, hackers are constantly attacking your home network from the internet with automated tools. Let's begin with the brain of your home Wi-Fi network, your Wi-Fi router. The router is a low-powered computer with antennae and Ethernet ports which creates and manages your Wi-Fi network. The router connects via a wired connection to your internet service provider, like your cable company. If you're like most people, you probably weren't aware that you can actually configure your Wi-Fi network. If you did configure your router, are you sure you did it securely? The various Wi-Fi standards are flooded with acronyms and tech terminology, so very few people actually understand what all these options mean. Let's dig in to determine if your home network is properly set up and secure. Your Wi-Fi router serves as a communications bridge between your internet's wired connection and your local wireless devices. These devices need to stay within 200 feet of the router to maintain their connections to the router. That's a much smaller range than cell phone towers. The wireless connection degrades as you move away from the router. That's just basic radio physics. So your connection will be slower and spottier the further away your device is. Environmental factors, such as thick walls, wireless phones, or microwave ovens can also reduce your Wi-Fi network's maximum speed. When you click to connect to a Wi-Fi network, based on the network's SSID, your laptop must first decide which encryption strategy to use, then sends a PSK or pre-shared key encrypted for validation on the router. If the laptop sends the correct password, the router grants access to the network. So, is your router configured for maximum security? Let's find out. Home routers are configured via your web browser, but you will need to know the IP address or the DNS name of your device. This can often be found on a sticker on the router, including the credentials you will need to log in through the router's web interface. Common locations are listed here. The router's address can also be found in your laptop's TCP IP settings. Once you navigate with your web browser to the proper address, the router may ask you for credentials. These credentials can either be found printed on the router itself or in the router's manual, which you can find online. In case you make a mistake while configuring the router or you forget the administrator password, you can easily reset it by pressing and holding the reset button on the router. So you can't do any real permanent damage by changing these settings. Just make sure that all the users on the network are aware that there could be some Wi-Fi outages when you're making these changes. Once you're logged in as the administrator, you should look for firmware updates. Oftentimes, the router's web interface will warn you that there's a firmware update available, and you should go ahead and do that as soon as possible because those often can include security fixes. Since your router will often face the internet and protect your internal network's devices, it is a prime target for hackers and spammers. Next, look for the wireless settings. A modern Wi-Fi router probably supports 802.11a, b, GN, and even AC. These codes refer to iterative improvements in Wi-Fi speed and signal strength. Your router likely supports the network of 2.4 and 5 GHz on the radio spectra. It's fine to run both at the same time because they don't interfere with each other. Depending on how far you are from the router and how many other Wi-Fi networks are running around you, one of the bands may provide a faster, stronger connection. You can test the speed of your connection for comparison purposes using speedtest.net. So, an advanced Wi-Fi setting that you may wish to change to improve your network speed is called transit power. In your Wi-Fi configuration, it's probably set to 100%, which sprawls the network to its maximum coverage distance. This may seem counterintuitive, but setting it to the max can actually reduce your network speed. Why is this the case? It's because other Wi-Fi networks around you may compete for the same radio frequencies. So, by reducing the power and strength of the emitted radio waves, your network may compete less with surrounding networks. This is especially true in smaller homes and apartments, where maximum Wi-Fi coverage covers neighbors' rooms unnecessarily. Try reducing the Wi-Fi power to the minimum acceptable coverage level, and test with speedtest.net to see the results. Security-wise, the best you can do right now is enable WPA2 PSK, which are adequate for home networks. If you see WEP or WPA without the two enabled or it's running in compatibility mode, you should disable them unless you have old devices on the network which do not support WPA2. WEP and WPA have been thoroughly cracked and are pretty much equivalent to no security. And if your settings indicate an open network, that means that there is no authentication or encryption required to access the network. Anyone within range of the open Wi-Fi network can view the internet traffic or use the internet connection, which is probably not what you wanted. Make sure that you use a reasonably secure password that's not easily guessable. You may also be compromising your security by sharing the Wi-Fi password with too many people. When you share your password, you're granting users unlimited access to your internal network, which includes your laptops, cell phones, printers, and smart speakers. A malicious user could use your password to access or even reconfigure your devices. To prevent this, activate your router's guest network feature. Guests connect to a separate network which is isolated from your devices and other guests. That means that the guests can connect to your internet, but just not your devices. Configuring the guest network means assigning it a name or password, which you can then freely share with whomever you want to give internet access to without risking your own devices. Keep in mind, regardless of what encryption setup you have for your Wi-Fi network, that a Wi-Fi network is still less secure than an in-home wired network, since Wi-Fi uses radio waves. For example, even if the Wi-Fi network cannot be decrypted, the use of the Wi-Fi network can be detected potentially a kilometer away, letting a potential burglar know whether or not that you're home. Exploits for WPA2 do exist, so make sure that your router is still supported by its vendor and make sure that your firmware is up to date. So why would a hacker want access to your router anyway? Aside from stealing your online credentials, organized crime can benefit from using your router and connected devices as automated spam senders called spam bots or zombies. If your network is entirely wired via Ethernet cables, consider shutting off Wi-Fi entirely or just using it for guest access. Let's review the router checklist. Ensure router firmware is up to date. Same as with updates for any device. Try both the 2.4 and 5 GHz bands. The best band may vary across your Wi-Fi devices. Experiment with reducing transmit power. You may find an easy speed increase. Validate that WPA2 PSK only is configured. Don't forget to use a password that cannot be guessed. Offer a guest network to your guests. Even if you trust them, they could be unwittingly bringing malware to your network. Prefer a wired Ethernet connection whenever possible. Your router has Ethernet ports. You will get better, faster, and more consistent network performance from Ethernet cables.